Good morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. We're so happy to have you join us out here by our little Honeycrisp apple tree. And we are going to double dip with these apples. This is the first year this little tree has produced anything, and the apples, as you can see, are quite small. But I'm going to try to do two things with this entire batch of apples, not dividing them in half and doing two things, but using all the apples for one thing and then using what's left to do another thing. And so I'm going to pick all of these apples, and then we'll go back to the kitchen and I will show you the equipment that we're going to use and explain more about it. I think this is going to be very exciting if it works out. So I'll see you back in the kitchen in just a little bit. So here we have all of the apples from that tree, from the tiny ones to the big ones. What a difference. And these are Honeycrisp apples, so they're very sweet, and these are exactly the type that we want for what we're going to do. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to prepare the apples just the way I do for applesauce, which is I'm going to wash them all, and then I will quarter them. I'll cut out bad spots. There are some bad spots on these, sadly. We spray, but still, the worms get to them and the birds get to them. So wash thoroughly and quarter. And I am not going to cut the cores out. I never have cut the cores out when I do applesauce. And that is one of the things that we're going to do. But first, before we do applesauce, we are going to juice the apples in this steam juicer. About a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, Jim and I made a video on making cranberry juice. And we did it the old-fashioned way, cook it down, strain it. And it's a very messy process and tedious. And several of our viewers underneath that video said, Pam, you guys need to get a steam juicer. Well, I had never even heard of steam juicers, so I did a little bit of research, and we did buy this steam juicer. And I have used it a couple of times, and oh my gosh, it is so easy, so wonderful. What you do is water goes in the bottom here. Apples go in this hopper, and then the steam comes up through here, through this point, and gets to the fruit or the vegetables, whatever you have in here, and the juice drips into this receptacle down here, and it comes out this hose. And it is just pure and clean and wonderful. And so my first job is to cut enough apples to fill this hopper. And as soon as I get the apples to fill this hopper, we'll come back and I will show you. But these apples, when the juice is done, will be completely cooked. Granted, they'll have the juice out of them and a lot of the sweetness, but the apples themselves still have that pulp. Then we're going to take the hot apples and run them through the Victorio strainer, which is usually what I always do with applesauce. I cook them in a great big pot. I skip the juicing part, but I've always wondered because there's a lot of juice in the water that I cook the apples in, so now I'm going to be able to take that juice, and then we'll run it through this Victorio strainer, and it will take the skins off, and the seeds and the core pieces will all come out one end, and the apples will come out the other end, all textured and ready for applesauce. Now we may need to add a little bit of liquid back in. We may need to add a little bit of sugar back in since we're taking a lot of that out with the juice. And so we're going to be double dipping with this batch of apples, doing two things for the price of one. And I love it when that happens. So this is going to be a long process, and we're going to get busy right now getting those apples ready. So we'll come back when I have our first juicer batch ready to go. It took about 20 minutes to do this. I have saved some of the best ones for eating apples. So we'll have a few of these wonderful Honeycrisp apples for snacking. I'm going to put the lid on here. It doesn't quite fit. It doesn't go down tightly, but it will. As the apples begin to shrink a little bit as they get heated, then the lid will fit tight. So I'm going to put it over on the stove, and when we start producing juice, I will bring you back and show you how that operation works. So see you in just a little bit. The house is beginning to smell wonderful, like apple juice and applesauce. So we have our steam canner going right here. This is my water bath canner. I have it on very, very low. The water is just keeping warm, barely, not even hardly simmering. Because as soon as I fill up a jar with the apple juice, I'm going to be putting it in here to keep it hot until I get a complete batch, and then we will process. Now here's the setup. I've just opened this drawer. I've put a cloth at the bottom, moved the utensil. This is my utensil drawer, and I've moved them out of the way so I can put a jar that is lower than the steam canner so the juice will run. Gravity helps us with this. I have the hose hooked up here so no apple juice can escape. Even though it has this little stopper right here, it still drips. So now we're going to release it and see what we've got. Beautiful apple juice. Looks like we're going to get maybe almost a quart for this round. Okay, I know that more will be coming. Oh, look at that, how beautiful it is. Very, very, very hot. So there's lid, ring, finger tight, and beautiful, beautiful. In the canner to stay warm. So I have just put the steam canner and the Victorio strainer in our Amazon store for those of you that might want to check it out. For those of you that are purchasing things through our Amazon store, we deeply appreciate it. It helps support us, and as you know, we give half of the proceeds from our Amazon store to Children's Hospital, particularly Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City, where my great-grandson's life was saved. He spent the first 4 months of his life there and now is just a normal, wonderful, active 3.5-year-old. So this is the Victorio strainer. The apples or whatever you're going to be processing goes in the hopper. You mash the hopper, the fruit down while turning this handle. It sends it through this strainer piece right here. And then the garbage comes out here, and that would be the skin and the core and any seeds. And then, in this case, the applesauce will come into this bowl right here. But when we get ready, you'll see how this works. And it is just the slickest thing in the world to do applesauce. So we will be back when we are ready to switch over from apple juice to applesauce. It's finished juicing. There's still a tiny bit of juice accumulating in this bottom section, but we'll just pour that into a pint jar and put it in the refrigerator and enjoy it fresh. We got 2 quarts, and just as soon as I moved the juicer off the big burner, I moved the canner over there, so our 2 quarts are in there. And according to the USDA processing guidelines, we need to process that for 10 minutes. So that's my steam canner. As soon as we get a good volume of steam coming out from under that lid, we will go ahead and start our timer for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, we're going to do applesauce. So let's take a look and see what these apples look like after the juice has been extracted. So here we have it.
I had a difficult time walking.
And so you can see there's a little bit of juice collecting in the bottom of the pan.
Okay.
I cannot believe that over the years when I have done applesauce, I put the apples, as I mentioned earlier, in a big pot and just put a little bit of water in there and boil them until they're completely soft like these are. Oh my goodness sake. And then that water that's in the bottom extracts a lot of the juice, and so it multiplies in volume, and then I usually just dump that right down the sink. So I've wasted a lot of apple juice. So this steamer gives me a way where I can preserve both the juice and make applesauce. So we're going to go ahead and start, and this is kind of a messy business. That one got in here with a little blemish on it. Not going to put that in our applesauce. So we just move these over to the hopper. and start the process. Now I'm going to remove this little piece so that you can see what's happening. The apples are coming through here and they're getting diced very finely so that the applesauce will come in here, and then in a minute we're going to get some garbage parts coming out there. And then we'll taste this applesauce after we get it all done. To see if it needs more liquid. Remember, we took a lot of liquid out with that juice, to see if we need more liquid or more sweetener in here, because we also, with the juice, took a lot of the sweet out. So there comes the garbage part. And you can feed that to your chickens. I'm trying to be really careful of my new granite. All right, I just turned this handle until the last of the waste came out. We have one small bowl of waste, which is seeds and skin and the tough fibers from the cores of the apples. So I'm going to set that aside. That will go in our compost pile because we no longer have chickens. And let's see what we have over here. So I'm going to remove this little piece. Get the last of it off this. And then I'm going to scrape the strainer. Boy, when I put the Victoria strainer on the our Amazon store this morning, I noticed that the new ones have 3 strainers in 3 different sizes, not just this one. I've had mine for 40 years anyway, maybe even more. And that cardboard box, it's gone. I'm going to start putting this in a little plastic bin because that box has seen better days. So, and then I just take this apart and wash it, and right now we're just going to combine this batch with the previous batch. So it looks like we have 4, maybe 5 quarts of applesauce here. So not a bad yield from that little tree that I think we've had that tree for 4 years. So next thing to do is to taste this to see, oh, and this was the amount of juice that I poured out at the bottom, so we will probably enjoy that later today after it is chilled. You know, it's not bad at all for having the juice extracted. It's a little thick. I'm just going to add some of this juice back in. So I'm going to put in maybe 1/4 of a cup of sugar, not that much. And I love apples and nutmeg, so I'm putting in just a taste of nutmeg. Not a whole lot at all. That was maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon. And a sprinkle of cinnamon. And our canner is done. So I'm going to turn that off and we'll get those out in just a second. Stir this in. I have wondered all season how these Honeycrisp apples would do with, I was going to make pie filling with them, but I changed my mind on that. There were quite a few worms and blemishes, and it was just easier to do this. The thing that I love about this Victorio strainer is that it saves me from having to peel and core the apples. I just wash them, quarter them, and get them right in that juicer. Okay, so rinse the spoon. It needs just a little bit more sugar. So I put maybe a half a cup total in there. Perfect, just perfect. All right, I'm gonna get these jarred up and get them in the canner, and we'll be back. So here we are with our applesauce. We got 3 quarts plus 1 pint and this much, which was not quite added to this. It didn't make a quart. So I just kept this out. We'll have this probably for lunch today. This much juice for us to have a little sip of a little bit later today. These are now going into the steam canner. And with a steam canner, you use the very same recipes for water bath canning, very same processing times. It's the same. And so processing time at our elevation for quarts of applesauce is 30 minutes. Because I have a pint in here, I'm going to also process that pint for 30 minutes. That's what USDA says. So this is a good learning experience, that when you have different size jars, you always use the processing time for the largest jar. So we'll get these in the canner, and then we will be back after we've taken them out and we can see our whole results. So see you soon. So I'm just getting the pint of applesauce. And here we have the products from our one little apple tree with its first year of production. I absolutely love what we have done today. The economy of what we have done just tickles me. I almost get goosebumps about it. First of all, the economy of doing 2 things with the same batch of apples. The economy of using the Victorio strainer, so I don't have to spend the time peeling and coring apples, and I wouldn't use my peeler corer thingy. I would either need to do it by hand or figure out something else if I was going to do it. A lot of people take the skins off and core apples before they make apple juice, but for us, we have made the decision today that we've shown ourselves that we don't need to do that. While the applesauce was processing, Jim and I had a little bit of lunch. We polished off the applesauce, we polished off the apple juice, we put it over ice. The apple juice was wonderful, but the applesauce was fabulous. It was probably the best applesauce I have ever made. It worked out so well, and there was no throwing the boiling water down the sink. The other economy thing is my steam canner. The steam canner uses less energy and less water. The energy is because it takes quarts and quarts of water in a canner that size to fill up over the top and do regular water bath canning. But when I do steam canning, I put this much water in the bottom, so it takes less energy to bring that water to a boil. The processing time stays the same, whether it's steam canning or whether it's water bath canning. We process applesauce for 30 minutes. We process apple juice at our elevation for 10 minutes. So this was a wonderful day for us, and it gives me more opportunities. We have very few sweet apples left. My favorite apple tree, and someone asked the other day, Pam, please tell us what a variety your favorite apple tree is. Well, the truth be known, I don't know. When we bought the house, the apple trees remained unidentified. So it is a sweet apple. And then I know for sure that we have a big Granny Smith tree, but the other apple trees I don't know. We planted the Honeycrisp tree, so I do know what that one is. Success, and I am thrilled. I'm also tired. The downside of this is washing up all of the equipment afterward and getting it put back. But to me, that's worth it. So thank you for being with us on this double dipping experience, and we will see you very shortly with another video.